All right, so we're back for part 2 of the drum and percussion project for MIDI 1. We've got 4 bars of drums sequenced, and what I want to do now is start to kind of organize the session. So you'll notice that I didn't start recording right at the beginning of the timeline. I let a couple bars go by where we did sort of a count off, gave ourselves a chance to kind of get into the groove. And also later on, when we maybe start adding some live instruments to these tracks, we want to have time for them to hear the tempo, maybe take a breath before they come in with a vocal note, or even play, slightly before the downbeat and not have it get cut off. So I like to add a couple bars of just open space at the beginning of the sequence. So this sequence is going to start at bar 3, and I'm going to go ahead and drop a marker to let me know that's the beginning of my project. So if I go to the timeline here, and in grid mode, which allows me to move from one grid line to the next, it kind of snaps to the grid lines. I can click on bar 3, which is where I started playing the groove, and I'm going to drop a marker. There's 2 ways you can do it. One is to go to the markers ruler and click on the plus sign, and then we can lay down this new memory location or this new marker. I'm going to call it 1 through 8 because this will be the beginning of the first 8 bars of the sequence, and hit OK. So this is really just a visual marker. It doesn't really affect the sequence in any way. You can move these. If you drop it in the wrong spot, you can just drag it wherever you want it to go. And you can also delete them just by dragging them down until it turns into a trash can and let go. But I'm going to keep that marker there. And now we have the beginning of our timeline. So let's take the drums that we do have and let's multiply them, or, expand them. So I'm going to make a selection here. And if you look right here, you can see that my selection starts at 3, which is measure 3, beat 1, and goes till the end of measure 7. And the length of the selection, and this is very important, is exactly 4 bars. So if we're going to take a piece of groove and we're going to loop it or duplicate it, it needs to be an exact round number. Otherwise, if you lop off a beat or something like that, when it repeats, it'll be like a hiccup and it'll drop a beat every time. So we've got to make sure that the length is either 2 or 4 or 1, some kind of whole number with a bunch of zeros afterwards. Okay. So if I want to duplicate this piece of drumming, I can either copy and paste it, just like you would do on any program like Microsoft Word or whatever. So I could hit Command-C and copy it, and then I can just drag my cursor to this next measure and hit Command-V. And it'll paste the groove over there, no problem. Another way that I can do this is to highlight exactly 4 bars and then use the feature of Command-D, which is duplicate. And it automatically gives us another 4 bars of the same thing. And now we have 8 measures of drum groove. So the first 8 of your project is almost done. I'm going to drop a marker at the end here. Again, it's either the Enter key on your numeric keyboard or the plus sign on the markers ruler. The second section will be bars 9 through 16. So that's where that's going to start. Cool. All right, we've got drums. That's good. The only other thing we have to do is we want to add drum fills at the end of each 8-measure phrase. So it doesn't have to be too crazy, just something that helps kind of pull the listener's ear into the next groove, the next section of the tune, as if you're going from a verse to a chorus or something like that. All right, so I'm going to start recording from about 4 bars before the end. And I'm just going to drop in a little fill that will kind of lead us into the next section. Here we go. 1, 2, 1. Cool. Clean it up. And now we have a little transition, a little drum fill that gets us from the first 8 bars into the next 8 bars. So let's go to the next 8 bars. And what I want to show you here is that you don't have to start recording right at bar 9 or 11 on the timeline. We can actually create the next groove anywhere that we want, and then we can move it back to the spot where it needs to be. So I'm going to just put my cursor right here at bar 12 on the timeline, give myself a couple bars, and then think about what would be a good place to go after that first groove. Cool. Clean that up. And this time I'm playing in a 16th note grid. So when I quantize, I have to make sure that I quantize to the same level of subdivision that I'm playing. So I wanted to try to change up the feel a little bit. So when I go to the quantized grid, I'm going to choose 16th notes and hit apply. Cool. Now let's add some kick and snare. All right. Latency's killing me, but we're going to make it. We'll muscle through. Thank goodness for quantize. All right, so I tried to really change the groove in the second half so that you can hear it really change when we go from the first part to the second. So here we go. I've got 4 bars, and as we already know, if I just highlight those 4 bars at an even round number, 4-00000, now I can Command D and copy that. And now I've got 8 bars. And with that selected, if I hold the Shift key, I can shift click and now select the entire thing. And now I'm going to move it back to connect it to the first 8 bars that I created. So let me show you another feature here in Pro Tools. Right underneath the grid values, we have something called nudge. And we can nudge by minutes and seconds or samples or whatever we want. But in this case, we're going to do it by bars and beats. And so I've selected bars and beats, and I'm going to do it 1 bar at a time. And the way that this works is whatever value you put into the grid, or sorry, the nudge window, we can move the selected stuff on the timeline by that amount. So we don't have to try to drag things with the mouse. And the way it works, if you have a numerical keyboard, you just hit the plus or minus keys. And for me, since I don't have a numerical keyboard, I'm going to hold Control and then just go left and right arrows. So check it out. See it moving back and forth? So now I can just drop it right over, and it's exactly 1 bar of nudge, and it'll fit right up against what I did before. So let's check it out. Here's the last couple bars. Here comes the fill. So there we have the transition from the kind of the A section to the B section, if you will. Cool. Let's keep moving. So we've got 16 bars of drums. Obviously, I'd probably add a drum fill at the end of that section just to keep it going. But I'm going to jump down to the percussion track. I'm going to grab the handle here, open it up, and how about some tambourine? That's always good. So I think this time, instead of taking a little bit and copying and pasting it, I'm just going to try to play along with the whole thing. All I have to do is just play 1 key, really, and see if I can come up with something that sounds good for the 2 sections. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, and... Next part. So, you can be kind of not too judgmental about some of this stuff. Sometimes I'll just kind of play things like that, try to get it as close as I can. And even if my performance isn't that great, if I throw it on the grid, it'll kind of lock it into the time feel, and maybe an unexpected happy accident will take place, and I go, oh, that's kind of cool. It fell into a spot that I wasn't expecting, but it still kind of works. So I'm going to double click this whole region here, go to Event, Operations, quantize it, and again, I was playing some 16th note stuff, so I'm going to quantize the whole performance to the 16th note grid. There we go. So that's pretty good. I've got basically now 16 bars of drums and percussion. If I want, I can change from clips view to notes view and scroll this up and see all the notes on the screen. All right, so before I get out of here on this first project, there's just two more things that I want to demonstrate. And one is the idea of playing backbeats on beats 2 and 4. If I get a little bit closer on the screen here, so if I zoom in a little bit more, you'll see now that the bars and beats timeline shows a 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4. What it's showing you is the bar and then literally the beat. And the backbeat on a drum groove is what we hear on beats 2 and 4. It's usually a high, tight sound like a snare drum, or it could be a clap. And what you see here is that I've been playing the snare drum on beat 2 and 4. So if I click on it, you can see it right there. Okay, so that's what we mean by the backbeat. And the reason that we do this is because most popular music feels that strong beat on 2 and 4. It kind of came up through swing music, which we call, the swing beats of 2 and 4. And then with rock and roll, it was kind of changed from the drum kit, from the ride cymbal, the hi-hat, to a snare drum. And now with other types of pop music and hip hop, like I said, we'll play a clap or something else that has that same kind of sound to it. While I'm here, I'm going to show you two little tricks that you can do with your backbeat to kind of spice it up a little bit. So right now, we have this snare drum playing on 2 and 4. And we have the ability to select all of the snare drums. If I go to my piano roll and click on that note, you notice that it selects all of the snare drums down the line, right? So they're all selected. Now, with the hand tool, with the grabber tool, I'm going to hold the Alt key, and I'm going to drag the first one of these up or down, and it's going to duplicate all of those 2s and 4s and move them to a different sound source. Check it out. There it is on the clap. We can go to that sound, a different snare, a cross stick. So I'm going to leave it on the clap, and now it's going to play snare drum and clap together. But they're so tight that you almost can't even hear that there's two sounds going on. So I'm going to show you another trick. Go back to the clap, which is on that E flat. Click on the piano roll. It selects all those 2s and 4s. We're going to go back to nudge. We're going to change to minutes and seconds. And right now it's set to 10 milliseconds. That's perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to nudge using the control and the arrow keys that 2 and 4 on the clap a little bit to the right. Can you see it move? There's the original. There it is 10 milliseconds later. Here it is 20 milliseconds later. If I play it back, you'll hear that the clap is a little bit behind the snare drum. So it's a way to kind of separate those two sounds, kind of pull back on the backbeat a little bit, and to thicken up the 2s and 4s on your groove. It's kind of a nice little trick. Last thing, and then we'll wrap up this tutorial. It asks you to use like an EQ plugin on the tracks. So really quick, if we go back to the mixer view and my drums right below the Expand 2 track, if I do multi-channel plugin and EQ, I can pick like the EQ3. This is a parametric EQ. Don't worry about how it works. I just want you to get in there and play around with it. But the point is that you don't have to just accept the way drums are provided to you in Pro Tools. We can kind of change and modify those sounds using EQ. So I'm just going to do something kind of drastic so you can hear what it sounds like. I'm going to play this back, and I'm just going to move some of this stuff up and down. So I want you to just play with it, put an EQ on the drum track or the percussion track or maybe both, and just see what happens when you start moving things around and see if you can kind of tailor that drum sound to be a little bit more the way that you would like it to be. And on each successive project, we'll do more and more with doing effects processing on channels. All right, I hope this helps. On to project 2.